Have you ever had one of those moments? A really strong feeling, a powerful intention maybe, and then things just seem to click into place, almost like it's more than just coincidence.
Yeah. It definitely makes you think about the power behind our thoughts.
Exactly. And that's what we're really digging into today. We're exploring these big ideas, willpower, and intention, drawing from some, well, pretty fascinating and ambitious historical texts that's aiming to tap into some kind of ancient wisdom.
That's right. We're looking mainly at Isis Unveiled, which came out in 1877,
Hmm.
and then The Secret Doctrine from 1888. And these books were huge projects.
Huge is right.
They were trying to synthesize this idea of an ancient wisdom, something they believed was the hidden root of, well, pretty much all major spiritual and philosophical traditions, looking for the universal blueprint, you could say.
And they weren't shy about tackling the big stuff, were they? Isis Unveiled, it reads almost like a challenge to the limits of Western science and religion at the time.
Absolutely. It championed Hermet philosophy, pushing for this universal wisdom religion idea.
Right, to kind of bridge the gaps. And then the secret doctrine. Wow. It goes even bigger, trying to weave together science, religion, philosophy, mapping out cosmic evolution, human development, all from an occult viewpoint. They really swung for the fences.
It certainly did. The goal was clearly to push people beyond just a material understanding of things towards something more interconnected, esoteric even.
Yeah.
And when they talk about will and intention, it's not just theory. They saw these as actual forces, forces that could, really change somewhat. It's deep stuff, maybe intentionally so, to kind of force a more intuitive understanding.
Okay, so our mission here, for you listening in, is to unpack what these foundational texts really mean by willpower, and intention. Not just as abstract concepts, but as potentially, well, transformative tools. So maybe let's start with some basic definitions based on how they use the terms. What's will in this context?
Okay, so will, at its most basic level in these writings, is like the fundamental cosmic force, the creative directing energy of the entire universe. It's tied directly to the divine, the ultimate source.
The engine of everything.
Kind of, yeah. The animating principle.
In willpower, that sounds more personal, more human scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Willpower is presented as our human ability to consciously tap into and direct that universal will. But, and this is key, they stress it's not automatic. It's something that needs cultivating, training.
Like a skill or a muscle you have to build.
Precisely. Needs focus, discipline, practice.
Okay. And the third piece, intention. Where does that fit? Seems crucial.
Absolutely crucial. Intention is the why behind it all, the underlying motive, the purpose that directs your willpower. It's what determines the ethical quality and the metaphysical effects, as they see it, of how you use that power. It's the moral compass, essentially.
Got it. So will is the cosmic power, willpower is our ability to direct it, and intention is the why that guides it. Okay, let's dive deeper into this cosmic will. Where does it come from?
Well, the texts point to an ultimate source, something beyond our full grasp. They call it the absolute para-Brahman, the one reality. It's the unmanifest ground of all being.
Yeah.
Universal will is then the first expression of that absolute. Its primary dynamic aspect. It's described as the one and sole principle of abstract eternal motion, the first ripple from the stillness.
So it's like the universe itself is willed into existence.
That's the idea. The great universal idea willed, and the cosmos sprang into existence. It flows out from the source, and this connects to that Hermetic idea, as above, so below.
Ah, the law of correspondences.
Exactly. Our own impulses mirror these cosmic ones. Just like our actions come from our will, the universe comes from divine will.
But it's not just one big block of will, is it? You mentioned different levels.
Right. It's described as manifesting in layers, often in sevens, a septenary scale. From the most abstract, pure will, almost like pure potential, down through different planes, eventually showing up even as basic instinct or desire, like the karma principle they talk about.
Karma like desire.
Yes, but even at its highest, most abstract level, will is described as everlasting ideation. So it's inherently linked to consciousness, to mind. It's not a blind force. There's intelligence behind it.
Okay, so if that's the universal will, how does our will relate? Are we just puppets?
No puppets, no. Human will is seen as a direct reflection, a spark, or particle of the divine essence, as they put it. Our core spirit shares its nature.
The spark of the divine.
But the crucial difference for humans is conscious will. Our ability to choose to direct that spark intentionally, that's what separates us from animals operating mainly on instinct. We have this potential to consciously work with this force.
So it's our conscious choice that makes the difference. That feels empowering.
It's central to their whole view of human evolution, really. Developing spiritual abilities, the CDs they mention, reaching higher consciousness, adeptship. It all hinges on cultivating and directing our conscious will.
CDs being like special abilities.
Yes, latent potentials.
Hmm.
Adepts are those who fully develop these through their will. They master nature, essentially, by using the same principle nature uses, but consciously. The key is aligning your personal will with your higher self, the spiritual core.
Now, you mentioned these texts engage with Western philosophy too. Schopenhauer came up.
Yes, definitely. There's a clear dialogue with Schopenhauer, especially his idea of will as the fundamental reality, the thing in itself behind appearances.
Okay, so where do they agree?
Well, both see will as this ultimate metaphysical principle running through everything, not just life, but all of nature. And both link ethics to recognizing the unity of this will. If we're all expressions of the same underlying will, that has ethical implications.
A sense of universal connection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are big differences, too. Schopenhauer's will is often seen as this blind, ceaseless striving, leading to a sort of pessimism where escape means negating the will.
Right, wanting less.
Whereas the esoteric view sees universal will, ultimately as tied to down ideation, purposeful cosmic evolution. So the path isn't just negation, it's cultivation, purification, and conscious direction of will towards higher goals.
Yeah.
Plus, the esoteric framework fully integrates karma and reincarnation, which aren't really central for Schopenhauer.
And these ideas didn't just pop out of nowhere. They saw themselves as part of a longer tradition.
Oh, absolutely. They explicitly connect theosophy to older streams like Neoplatonism. They even call the Neoplatonists early theosophists, and Hermeticism.
So Neoplatonism.
Right.
Like Plotinus, emanation from the one.
Precisely. That idea emanation resonates strongly. And the Hermetic, as above, so below, is a core principle they adopt. Plus, the whole theme of spiritual ascent, reuniting with the divine, that's common ground.
It's like they're weaving together threads from different places.
Exactly. It's syncretic. They pull from Western esoteric traditions, but heavily integrate Eastern philosophy too, hence all the Sanskrit terms. And within this framework, will is dynamic. It evolves from basic instinct up through human self-consciousness to the perfected will of an adept.
And that highest will is tied to cosmic intelligence.
Yes, everlasting ideation. It echoes concepts like the Neoplatonic nous or divine mind and Vedantic ideas of universal consciousness. It's intelligent, purposeful energy.
Okay, so we have this incredibly powerful force will, but using it, that seems like it needs careful handling. That's where intention comes in as the guide.
Absolutely. Intention, or motive, is presented as the critical factor. They state it very directly. It is the motive and the motive alone which makes any exercise of power become black, malignant, or white, beneficent magic.
Wow, that's stark. So the why is everything.
It's the absolute determinant between ethical use white magic or theurgy and unethical use black magic or sorcery. It's not just about what you do, but why you do it.
So for the good side, the intention has to be completely pure. No selfishness at all.
That's the standard they set. For white magic, the intention must be entirely unalloyed, totally free from self-interest. They argue you simply cannot work with higher spiritual forces if there's any selfish motive lurking. Purity of heart, acting for the universal good, is non-negotiable.
And black magic is simply any selfish use.
Any action driven by personal gain, malice, ego, trying to control others, that falls into black magic. And importantly, this includes even unconscious selfishness.
Unconscious selfishness, that sounds tricky.
It is. They warn that impure intention doesn't just have moral consequences. It has metaphysical ones. It kind of degrades the energy, makes the spiritual will act on lower, more chaotic psychic levels, leading to dire results. Selfishness is called the great curse of humanity, the main barrier to progress.
They really hammer home the need for selflessness then.
Massively. Real theosophy is altruism, they say. Altruism, compassion, truthfulness. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they're foundational requirements for the path.
Okay, what about this other concept, will prayer? How does that differ from regular prayer?
It's presented as something quite different, an occult process, a spiritual transmutation. It's not about petitioning, asking for stuff. It's about actively transforming your own limited desires.
Transforming desires. How?
By consciously aligning yourself with your higher self, that divine spark, and surrendering the demands of the personal ego. The attitude is one of humility, like, thy will be done, not mine. You're trying to tune your personal will to the universal frequency, so to speak.
So it's less about getting what I want and more about aligning with what's needed for the whole.
Exactly. And when done with that selfless alignment with real intensity and aspiration, they say will prayer becomes this potent creative force. Like the philosopher's stone, transmuting the lead of personal desire into the gold of spiritual energy that acts for the universal good.
Okay, but let's be realistic. What if our will isn't perfectly pure? What are the downsides, the dangers?
The warnings are pretty strong. Misusing willpower, even unintentionally through impure motives, is risky. It's not just about causing obvious harm. Even actions that seem good on the surface can be harmful if they're secretly driven by ego, or if they involve trying to impose your will on someone else's mind that's explicitly called out as sorcery.
So even trying to help someone in a controlling way is bad.
According to this framework, yes, which highlights why they stress rigorous self-knowledge and ethical purification before attempting any practical occult work. Ignorance of your own hidden motives, lack of self-control. These can lead straight into negative karma and, unintentionally, black magic.
So selfishness literally blocks access to higher power.
That's the teaching. It limits you to lower psychic astral energies, which are seen as more volatile and potentially dangerous. Ethical purity selflessness isn't just moral, it's presented as a metaphysical necessity for accessing higher realities. Attaining adeptship requires conquering that lower selfish self.
That sounds like an incredibly high bar for self-awareness.
It really is. They talk about needing to uncover hidden selfishness in the dark recesses of the mind. It implies a profound, ongoing process of introspection and purification. It's not a one-time fix.
Okay, this intense focus on will and intention seems to build towards actually doing something with it. Which brings us to Kriyashakti. Sounds like manifesting thoughts.
That's a good way to put it. Kriyashakti is defined as the mysterious power of thought, which enables it to produce external, perceptible, phenomenal results by its own inherent energy.
Wow.
It's called one of the 7 forces of nature, the creative power behind the CDs of advanced yogis. It's the mind's ability, when energized by will and focused by imagination, to objectify thought forms, to make thoughts real. The principle is, as God creates, so man can create, once sufficiently developed.
So intense focus can literally make things happen.
Intense concentration and powerful volition are the keys, yes. Imagination is also vital. It shapes the thought form. They explain it like this. Strong will and mental images can become subjectively real, like hallucinations.
Yeah.
But with even more intense, controlled, intelligent concentration, that subjective image can become objective, concrete, perceptible to others. That's Kriyashakti in action. It's even suggested this is how early divine beings helped shape humanity.
Mind-blowing stuff, but also sounds like it could go wrong easily.
Very easily. Kriyashakti itself is neutral, like any force. Its effects depend entirely on the intention behind it.
Right, the motive again.
So you could potentially use it for things like spiritual healing, directing energy, with pure intent. But they explicitly warn about the negative side. The evil eye, or genitura, is given as an example.
The evil eye, really.
Yeah, they suggest it could be Kriyashakti operating involuntarily through strong negative feeling or consciously directed malicious will. It really highlights the danger. They strongly warn against trying to develop these powers without deep self-knowledge, saying it inevitably leads to black magic and serious karmic issues if the intent is selfish.
So handle with extreme care, but is this something everyone potentially has?
That's another key point. It's described as a divine power latent in the will of every man, latent being the operative word.
Dormant, usually.
Exactly. It stays dormant unless consciously awakened and trained, typically through something like intensive yoga practice. Esoteric development is the process of unlocking these innate potentials. Kriyashakti is the bridge, the mechanism connecting inner thought to outer reality.
So magic isn't supernatural, just working with hidden natural laws.
That's the perspective. It demystifies miracles. But it also puts huge responsibility on us, because even unintentional strong thoughts could have effects, hence the constant refrain. Mental discipline, ethical purity, self-awareness are paramount.
Which brings us right back to training the will itself. This sounds like serious work, not a weekend workshop.
Definitely not. It's consistently portrayed as an arduous path demanding sustained effort, discipline, self-conquest. Progress is down to the individual. Each man must progress by his own efforts.
And conquering the lower self is key. Ego, desires.
That's central. Mastering those through developed will is the core of fellowship or discipleship. Purity, unwavering will, strict discipline. These are the requirements for mastery. It's about choosing the harder path to build strength.
And it's not just about suppression, but about channeling energy.
Exactly. Discipline helps conserve and direct vital energy. An untrained mind scatters it. The adept becomes a focused conduit. You strengthen willpower like a muscle by overcoming resistance. Do what is difficult, as one saying goes. Giving in weakens it. Sticking to your resolve strengthens it.
What kind of specific practices do they suggest for building this willpower?
Several come up repeatedly. Concentration dharana is fundamental. Fixing the mind on one point, shutting out distractions. Daily meditation is the core method for this, making the brain more receptive.
Okay, concentration first.
Yeah.
Then what?
Medication dhyana builds on that. It's a deeper state of absorption, moving beyond the senses. It involves stages, progressing towards contemplation or samadhi. It's about introspection, guided by higher principles and virtues, the paramitas they mention. Consistent practice is vital.
And Raja Yoga.
Yes, the kingly science. That's presented as a comprehensive system for self-knowledge and self-mastery, aiming to realize the divine self within. It's directly linked to occultism. Adepts use the will developed through Raja Yoga to gain powers, understand nature, and potentially achieve states like nirvana.
Any other practices mentioned?
Ethical purity is always there. Detachment from excessive worldly desires. Also things like affirmation and visualization to reinforce intention and will, though they do caution against certain breathing exercises, pranayama. Without expert guidance, that can be risky.
And the culmination of all this training is the adept, someone who has mastered their will and understands nature's forces.
That's the portrayal. The adept or mahatma is a fully self-conscious being who's awakened these latent powers through perfected will. They master nature by consciously using the same principle will that nature uses unconsciously.
And this leads to states like nirvana.
Yes. Nirvana is described as conscious union with nature, a result of this mastery. The siddhis, the powers, aren't tricks. They're natural expressions of that higher state of consciousness. But the whole process, the will training, is inseparable from ethical growth and self-knowledge. It's about managing that constant tension between the lower impulses and the higher self.
So the power isn't the end goal in itself.
No, the goal is spiritual evolution, using that developed will for altruistic purposes. Occult abilities are seen as natural byproducts of that evolution. Miracles are just the effects of hidden laws wielded by a developed consciousness.
It's such an interesting balance, building the strong personal will, but ultimately aiming to align it with something greater, the universal will.
That's the paradox, or maybe the developmental path. Forge the will, purify it through ethics, then align it with the universal for selfless service. Real power, in this view, comes from that alignment, not from brute force of ego.
Well, that was certainly a journey into some deep concepts. So quick recap. Will is the cosmic juice. Human will is our spark of it. Intention is the crucial ethical rudder. Willpower is the muscle we build through discipline. And Kriyashakti is the potential power of thought to actually create effects.
Nicely put. And yeah, these ideas are really the bedrock of the whole system they lay out. They explain cosmic origins, human potential, the path to mastery. It's a very practical spirituality in a way. Your ethical choices, your focused effort, these are presented as the actual mechanisms for transformation.
And you can see why these ideas have stuck around, influencing how people think about potential, consciousness, hidden laws, synthesizing knowledge. Even now, thinking about will and intention feels relevant, like keys to understanding ourselves and maybe reality itself a bit better.
Definitely. It really pushes you to consider the connection between your inner world, your thoughts, feelings, motives, and what manifests externally. It suggests our inner life has a weight, a power we might not always recognize.
So, a final thought for you listening. Given the power they attribute to intention and the need for discipline, what's one small conscious act of will you could maybe focus on today? Something to align your inner world just a little bit more with your deeper aspirations. Or, flipping it around, if our thoughts do have this creative potential, what kind of responsibility does that put on us moment to moment in how we think and feel? Definitely some things to chew on.